Hey friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be reviewing a new brand called Apocalypse Polish, specifically their Very Strange Things Volume 1 collection along with a couple of extras. Apocalypse is a 10-free indie brand based in Atlanta, Georgia, and as the name suggests, they were created with the end of the world in mind. So their collections are inspired by fictional, apocalyptic, and dystopian content. As always, I will save more of my thoughts for the end after some comparisons. For now, let me just show you the swatches. The first polish we have is Mornings Are for Coffee and Contemplation, which is described as a waffle orange shade that is accented by a strong maple sugar gold sheen. So basically it's an orange base with a gold shimmer, and this one is so beautiful. I already knew I was going to love this one because I'm just a sucker for a gold shimmer, and I just especially loved it in this warm orange base. It's just so bright and beautiful, and it had a really great formula too. As you can see, it is a little bit on the pearlescent side, so I am trying to be careful to make my brushstrokes as straight as possible, but it's not terribly brushstrokey, and I thought this one built up beautifully in just 2 coats. The next shade we have is Running Up That Hill, which is a bronze shimmer balm with large particle red to orange to gold shimmer that overtakes a soft tomato red base. I personally don't see that much of the tomato red base color. I would call this like a very warm bronzy shade though, so maybe it just depends on the lighting or your skin tone that you might see more of that reddish color coming through. Either way, this was another super beautiful shimmer kind of formula that was again basically opaque in 2 coats. The application felt super smooth and buttery as well. Next up we have Very Strange Things, which is a glitter polish in a clear base that has holographic red and black micro glitters. So you can see this is a super finely milled kind of glitter. It is very tiny but very, very dense. So I am going to be showing this built up on its own. I think it has enough coverage that you could wear it in 2 coats, but I personally love this more in 3 just because it really intensifies the color so much more. Even though it is just described as red, I personally would say it's more on like the brick red side. It's like a very rusty sort of shade, but I think it's just so beautiful, especially with those little accents of black. And here it is built up in 3 coats, and I just really love how this looks. It's so cool. It has a really dainty sparkle though. I was kind of surprised to see it be described as holographic, but not really get a ton of that rainbow sparkle. I almost wasn't sure if this was supposed to be a reflective polish because those red glitters just really stand out, especially when layered as a topper over black. Next we have Dear Billy, which is described as a wine-leaning red with an intense cherry red shimmer. This one was absolutely stunning. As you can see, it has a super pigmented formula where on the first coat it looks so full coverage. I had a hard time seeing some visible nail line. It was incredibly even as well, so I feel like if you're in a rush and your nails are really short where you have very minimal free edge, you might be able to get away with this in 1 coat. But of course I did end up doing a second one, and I think it looks so rich and so luxurious. The next shade we have is I Dump Your Ass, and this is a true neon magenta purple with a soft blue to purple shimmer. This was another one that really surprised me with its formula. You can just see how pigmented it was on the first coat. I was just expecting it to be a lot more sheer, and like the last shade, it was very even coverage. So even though it is a little bit more sheer than the red, I feel like because it's so even, you could kind of get away with it because a lot of shimmers are very sheer and buildable and still show some visible nail line. So that being said, I basically got this one fully opaque on 2 coats, and I just loved the gorgeous color. And rounding out the collection, we have In Soviet Russia, Upside Down Comes to You. And this is a thermal, which has a shimmery blue base when warm, as seen here, that transitions to a berry red color when cold, which is what you saw in the bottle. Except I wouldn't agree with that. The color that you see in the bottle, to me, is more of like a true purple or like a very warm toned purple, but I would describe it as a red leaning purple as opposed to a berry red. Hopefully you guys understand the difference between the two, but either way, this one had another really lovely formula. I would say that this one leaned the most on the jelly side, so it was a lot more sheer. I ended up building this up in 3 coats, which gave me the best coverage. It just made that blue base pop so much more. And here is a clip of the cold state where you can see it's very much a purple color, but it still has a gorgeous blue shimmer. Next, I have a couple of the previous gift with purchase shades. The first one here is called Friends Don't Lie, and this is actually another thermal. This one is described as a soft coppery pink when warm, as seen here, that transitions to a lavender purple with red shimmer when cold, which you'll be seeing in a little bit. So this is another one that I don't really agree with the color description. I guess I could kind of see that soft pink color in the warm state, though I would say it maybe leans a little more like an orchid or almost lilac color, while the cold state, as seen here, instead of being a lavender purple, is more of this like darker cornflower blue. At least I see it as more blue than purple, but either way, it is a pretty shade. And lastly, I have 001, which is a bright, true orangey red neon in a jelly leaning formula, which is probably hard to tell because I feel like on camera you just see that intense neon color, which is so eye-searing. Obviously the phone camera is going to pick it up as like even more intense, but even in real life, this is a very, very bright neon. And it definitely did have that jelly, squishy kind of formula. It was very even, but I could still see a hint of nail line. But I just stopped it at 2 coats since I thought it looked really great here. And here is a collage of the swatches from this collection, along with the gift with purchase shades. And yeah, I really enjoyed this color palette. I thought it was just so rich and stunning. Granted, a lot of those shades do give me more of like fall vibes, but there are a few that I think are bright enough that can definitely work for the warmer months. Lastly, I have a couple of cuticle oils to review. The first one is Alexi's Cherry Slurpee, which has scent notes of sweet maraschino cherries, cola accord, lime zest, lemon juice, caramel, nutmeg, ginger, cassia root, vanilla, and rum. Definitely a lot more complex notes than I was expecting. My nose is not sharp enough to distinguish all of the different scents, but it definitely smells nice, even though I don't like maraschino cherries. And I also have the Scoops Ahoy cuticle oil, which basically smells like an ice cream shop. There's scent notes of vanilla, waffle cones, and sweet creamy buttercream. I thought the cherry one was going to be my favorite, but I actually like this one more. And lastly, I just had to share this itty bitty cuticle oil sample in the scent In the Upside Down, I'm making waffles, which, you guessed it, smells just like waffles. So I haven't been using the cuticle oils for too long, but just first impressions, I do think they are really nice and nourishing. I would say that they are on the heavier side, so a little goes a long way. Moving on to the comparisons, we're starting with Mornings Are for Coffee and Contemplation, and I immediately thought of OPI's Data Peach, which is a shimmery, peachy, pearly shade, but as you can tell, that one is definitely more of a lighter peach color, a lot warmer, more corally in its undertone, while Apocalypse is almost more tangerine. I thought maybe it was going to be closer to some of the recent Prism shades that I shared, like Golden Mirage or Paloma Sunset, but as you can see, they are definitely very different. They all have that same warm golden shimmer, but they're not dupes. Next, for running up that hill, I was immediately reminded of a couple of coppery, bronzy shades like Holo Zyler Cat Eye and ILNP's Fawn. I know they might not look super close because both of those shades are magnetic, so you really just see the golden shimmer, but once they're magnetized, it's the base color that reminded me of the Apocalypse, though Fawn ended up being a little too dark and too brown, while Holo definitely is the closest, but it's a little too light or maybe just not as warm. So since running up that hill had that more reddish orange color, I thought it would be closer to compare it to Dimension Nails Bengal Tiger, which is one of my favorite metallic orange shades, but that one's more of a true orange, not as bronzy or coppery, so they're not exactly dupes, but they have a similar finish. Next, for Dear Billy, I was immediately reminded of a couple of shimmery, metallic kind of reds from Cracked, like Eat, Drink, and Be Cherry and Crimson Ecstasy. In the bottle, Crimson Ecstasy definitely looks the closest, but on the nail, that one still is a little too dark, though in certain angles, I think the shimmer does make it look like Dear Billy, but I wouldn't call them dupes exactly. The other main difference is that Crimson Ecstasy has this tiny reflective glitter, which is what you see in that gritty particle. I wanted to also quickly compare this to Starrily's Aurora Ignite from the somewhat recent Northern Lights collection. I thought these were going to be more similar, but Starrily is way too dark. I also had to compare Dear Billy next to a couple of Mooncat reds. The first one is Your Heart's a Black Hole, and the other one is the Arsonist. Your Heart's a Black Hole is actually a magnetic, but I'm just going to be showing it unmagnetized since it still has that red shimmery metallic look, but it's a little bit more muted in color. I would say that the Arsonist is more vibrant like Dear Billy, but it's also darker. So basically they're similar but not dupes. Then for I Dump Your Ass, I immediately thought of Cirque's Bitchin from the California Dreamin' collection. These aren't exact dupes, but they are so incredibly close. I would say that Apocalypse definitely has a little bit more vibrancy in the base color and maybe even in the shimmer as well. It just looks like a brighter or maybe darker shade of blue. The only other difference is that there's no holo in Apocalypse. Then for In Soviet Russia, I knew I wanted to see this next to Fauve's Monet because the warm state of the Apocalypse shade really reminded me of this Fauve. Again, they kind of have a similar vibe, but the colors are slightly off, so they're not dupes. I surprisingly didn't have something close to the cold state of In Soviet Russia. I thought maybe the closest was Holo Electric Sweetner from the Rock Candy collection, but as you can see, that one's just a little too bright. Then for Friends Don't Lie, which was the other thermal, I knew that the cold state of this reminded me of Cirque's Catalina and Fauve's Transient Light, which is also another thermal. So I figured to show the cold state of both of those, I can have them side by side on the swatch stick and Cirque's Catalina on my thumb. And you can tell that these are all definitely very similar. I would say though, Catalina is probably closer to the Fauve than to Apocalypse. That one just looks like a deeper or more vibrant shade of blue. Since Apocalypse was giving blue base with a pink shimmer, it was immediately reminding me of ILNP's Pool Party, and I figured I could also show it next to Starrily's The Cat's Meow. Even though that doesn't have a pink shimmer, it's more of a golden copper. I just thought it was going to be another somewhat close shade, but it's just a little too dark and muted, while Pool Party is a little too sheer. And lastly, I figured I could show this next to Holo Blue Rizzler, which was also from the Rock Candy collection. These two are a bit more similar, but I think in real life it's a lot easier to tell them apart, where Blue Rizzler is more of that true blue color, not to mention it has that crushed hollow finish. And lastly, for 001, I had to quickly show this next to Cirque Pyro, which unfortunately mine has faded. I feel like you can't really tell that on camera, but just believe me, it is not neon. The only true neon orange that I have in my collection right now is Cracked Polish's Cornea Killer, which is an intense neon orange, but that one is much lighter, almost more tangerine in color. You can tell just how red hot 001 is, where it might be closer to Cirque Pyro's original color. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of Apocalypse polish. As always, I would love to know your thoughts on these shades because overall I thought they were really, really great. Like, I really love the theme, the inspiration behind them, but the color palette was also so beautiful. I thought it was just so refreshing to see a big focus on like these warmer toned shades, especially outside of like the fall season. And as you saw, I had a really great experience with the application. Like, the formulas on these were so nice. They were so heavily pigmented, a lot of them being like almost one coaters, which is just so satisfying when it comes to painting with them. I feel like overall I don't have any complaints about these. Like, any sort of polishes that I might be more meh on, it's more so out of like a color preference thing versus the actual polish or product itself. So yeah, I really enjoyed these, and I thought it was so funny because when Annie reached out to me, she was like, I know we do, you know, more prugly things, and that's not really your like thing, but I was like, girl, prugly where? I think these are so beautiful. So definitely let me know if you would consider these prugly shades or just straight up pretty. I do also greatly appreciate being sent a couple of the previous special guest or gift with purchase shades, and more importantly that they are currently available to buy on her website, because I know that gift with purchases can be like kind of divisive. I do think the way that brands go about marketing the gift with purchase does say a lot though, because obviously they can lean into that very like FOMO aspect of, you know, oh, we have this super exclusive gift with purchase, you know, now's the only time you can get it if you spend this certain amount, whatever, and how annoying it is to only then see that brand bring back a previous gift with purchase. So I appreciate that, you know, from the beginning, Apocalypse is like, look, we have a couple of these gift with purchase shades that, you know, you could get at the beginning of like a launch of a new collection, but they also will be available for purchase at a later time. So I really appreciate the transparency there. And something else I want to highlight about Apocalypse is that they have pledged to donate 10% of their proceeds to different charities and organizations on a quarterly basis. Their website right now says that they're currently donating to the Partnership Against Domestic Violence organization, but when Annie reached out to me, you know, in regards to sending these polishes over as PR, she did let me know that they are also planning on donating an additional 10% to the World Health Organization from their next collection, and in the future that they would like to donate to the Trevor Project as well as the Bridge of Books Foundation. So I really just wanted to highlight that because as much as I love just, you know, sharing beautiful polishes and gushing over them, I really do love so much more just being able to highlight brands that put their money where their mouth is, because especially in this day and age, it really says a lot to see brands stand with communities that are marginalized or disenfranchised and showing support. So yeah, overall, definitely a great first experience with Apocalypse. Definitely let me know if you'd want to see more of them on my channel in the future, because they do also have the Very Strange Things Volume 2 collection. And obviously I'm sure they'll have, you know, other collections in the future, but let me know if that's something you would like to see more of, or just let me know any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!